Middlekauff! Hey! What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Haberman of Middlekauff show, podcast, whichever. Sometimes we call it one, sometimes we call it the other, but either way, it's us right here live on YouTube. Like and subscribe on the YouTube. We appreciate that. If you're listening to the podcast, then leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. We appreciate that. 5 stars in that. Leave us a question. That's how you get in the next Haberman and Middlekauff mailbag.
To use John Lynch's words, Guy, I believe we are ready.
Yeah? Ready for what?
His exact words were, we believe he is ready. I believe we are ready for today's show.
Oh, for Trey Lance. That's what it was. We believe he is ready.
We believe he is ready. And just like quoting John, I believe we are ready for today.
Yeah. If you're listening to this podcast, then you're listening on your own time, which is great. That's the beauty of podcasts, John. The consumer controls time. You're like, what's his name and whatever.
It's actually pretty genius. Like I see this a lot about people, still writing books. Obviously, there's still a lot of people that read. If I were in the book business and I was going to write a book, I think it'd be purely audio. Like I do believe that I don't listen to that many evergreen podcasts, but I see why they're really successful. Stevie Williams, Tiger's old caddy, just did this one on just like all the majors. And I can listen to that in a month or I can listen to it today. It just doesn't matter. And there are several, like some of the biggest, like Serial or whatever, the big podcasts that aren't necessarily most sports ones are pretty newsy, unless we just did an interview series with like the 94 49ers. And it was like Merton Hanks, Tim McDonald, Jerry Rice, Ricky Waters. Like you could probably listen to that whenever. But it does feel like most sports ones are pretty if you're going to listen to one on the NBA playoffs in a couple weeks, it doesn't matter. Who cares what they're talking about game 4, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But I do
did you notice, have you noticed, by the way, in how many mispronunciations and mistakes there are in the Belichick book audio version? There are several. There's a couple times where the guy stopped reading and starts over and they don't edit it out. And then he calls Matt Castle Matt Cassell several times.
Yeah, it happens with names for sure.
I'm like, is nobody, I don't know, editing this, spell checking this? I don't know.
But see, that's perfect for the consumer. You just keep listening. It just keeps on going.
Yeah, but right and wrong is still right and wrong. Like you want it to be right.
Yeah, what's new? It's much easier. It'd be much more time consuming probably for an editor to listen to the whole thing.
100%. Editor can just look and read. Podcast. Oh yeah, I'm going to listen to this pod, and then you've been mowing the lawn for 8 hours and you forget to take notes. You zoned out.
That's what I'm saying. That's where I think the money is in these books. Audio. And you notice when you buy a book, like on your iPad or your phone, if you want the print version, you make more money getting the audio version. Now, obviously, it's probably more time consuming. You got to spend money. You got to pay someone to read it. But that thing is that's the future.
I actually bought some magazines the other day, put them on the couch so that when I'm sitting on the couch and I'm killing time or I'm not really, there's nothing on, but I'm there or I'm watching some game and I don't know. I can, instead of grabbing my phone, I grab Middle East Times.
Is that what you bought?
Yeah. And then something about Middle Eastern politics, John, and then something about something about China. I got a magazine, a lot of China stuff.
You're just never reading that. Did you really do this?
I 100% did this. I was at a magazine store. I'm like, God, I've never been in a magazine store and bought magazines. And then I bought 3 magazines and they were $35. Magazines are like $9 on the cheap end now. A Rolling Stone, which is what I should have bought, I think was like 15 or something.
Well, you know why?
Yeah, because not as many people are buying them.
Well, and my complete guess would be there's way less advertising in them, right? They're not being subsidized that way, so they're not.
There's a lot of advertising. I just think they're maybe getting a lower dollar amount for their advertising, and I think less people are buying them.
Yeah, their business model's fucked.
Other than waiting rooms,
you are probably the last guy under 40 in a long time to go into that store and buy some magazines, especially the ones you bought.
Yeah, there was a guy in there with like a child. It's like, hey, do you have any kids magazines? Like, yeah, right here. So I don't know what to do. That kid doesn't have a phone yet, I guess.
Or I don't know, television or an iPad.
Yeah, I guess they don't. That kid doesn't have any of those yet either.
You with me though? You think audio is the future for books? Or you think like in 20 years everyone's reading? Because I don't know if people are going to be reading as much. How easy it is to listen
Well,
to
it's
a
definitely
book.
not trending that direction. So,
Yeah.
Middle East Times swimsuit edition. You guys, Michael says you guys could do the rewatchables, but with big various sporting events as bonus podcast. We did that.
I don't know if it works for sporting events quite like movies.
We did it for was it the 2019 Saints Niners game?
Yeah. Actually, it was a cool rewatch.
Did we put film in that, or how did we do that?
I don't quite remember, but I just remember it didn't quite pop with the listenership.
Yeah.
Now, weird times. I mean, this was mid 2020. I mean, we were desperate. You had to try some different things.
Yeah.
But,
we jumped on YouTube. We started there. Dan says, you may have just landed on the name, the No Notes podcast. Well, if you're listening to the podcast, what I was going to say is it doesn't matter. There's no such thing as late. Everything's on time. You're in control. If you were watching the podcast, we were just arguing about the name before we got on here, having a good scream at each other about it. And we may have worked some things out.
You know, we're just searching. We're just like the guys back in the 1840s coming out here searching for gold, just looking to see if you can get a little glimmer in the water and grab it and then take it to get a big piece of land.
Did you guys ever look into the old intro song price? Never.
What was that guy's name? Peter Gabriel?
Peter Gabriel, Sledgehammer was the song. Then we were getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and we were afraid of getting, dragged into court.
Yeah, we didn't want to see Peter Gabriel in civil court.
So, did you know that Major League Baseball is getting sued right now?
No.
By a guy,
Angel Hernandez?
It's a class action suit, not Angel. It's a class action suit by some guy, by a lawyer. Typically, the people that lead the class action suits, because we got nothing else to do. And the reason he's suing baseball is over the Astros cheating scandal, because he says that his daily fantasy, that all of the daily fantasy users were playing a rigged game
in 2017.
Yeah, and so everybody should get their money back. That's why the Yankees letter, this sealed letter, came out today. We're not going to dive too much into it. We got football to talk about. It's draft week.
But they admitted to cheating, right?
It's part of that case. I guess they were trying to steal signs in their film room, but they weren't communicating to the hitters the way the Astros were.
Well, remember the Yankees got caught. They had a video, something in the outfield, right, with an iPad.
The Yankees?
They weren't necessarily doing the bat thing, but they were stealing it with video, and they got caught. I remember that from 5 years ago. They had like a Jastrzemski was the deflator, but they had Skarneckia's kid, remember, got caught. They had a situation like that going.
That's
and baseball freaked out about iPads and technology, which honestly, I wonder when it's tough. You're like, well, people have been stealing signs forever, but there's a big difference of like using your fucking binoculars or whatever and using an iPad where it all gets recorded.
Right, where you can, to me, part of it is like with with technology, you can slow it down. And now it's a little less gamesmanship.
Well, remember what the Patriots would do? They would have it all, and then they would, whenever a guy would get cut from another team that they needed, they would bring that guy in at minimum just for a day, and he would be like, "Oh, where's my meeting room?" He's like, "Actually, you're just going to Ernie Adams' office." They take him to Ernie Adams' office. He'd press start, and they would just go play by play, and the guy would give him the shit.
Right, and Ernie'd be like, "All right, this is what we have. Is this accurate, or does this mean something else?"
They were ahead of the curve. I'll tell you that much.
Did you guys change the name? Ham is a good handle. We have not changed the name. Somebody said delay of game. Somebody said delay of lame.
I did think Schwarber's explosion would have been Sunday night was pretty special.
So, not my problem with it. It was great. It's what baseball needs. It's why you don't totally want robo umps, because you want some of the emotion still in the game. The stuff that we lost when guys used to argue. I did not watch. All I saw that game was that clip. So everyone said Angel Hernandez was terrible that day, which I believe. That particular pitch was fucking close as shit. I'm sure Angel was worse on other pitches.
I had multiple people tweet at me that said, like, I've watched this entire game. He has been the focal point of the game. Yeah. So I think it was a lead up to just his constant, he's one of the most, this is part of America. and maybe this happens in other countries too, where he's unfireable. It's just you get to these positions where, and he was genius. He sued, so now he's really untouchable by the union, and he's terrible. Like everyone acknowledges it, right? He's really, really consistently been bad. I forgot when Terry Francona went at it with him years ago.
Bob Melvin went at it with him years ago. I remember.
I think, did Bochy freak at him? I remember Bochy attacked like a third base umpire one time at the Dodgers. Was an all-time meltdown.
Tossed.
I don't know if it was him, but I just kind of like Kyle Schwarber. I'm just glad that he freaked out.
I love Schwarber. I remember once upon a time in radio, our producer saying to us, I got this guy, he's one of the early draft picks from Indiana. We could go interview him while we're down at Chris Ball. So we go interview. He's going to be good, man. And you and I were like, we don't want to do that. It was Kyle Schwarber.
Did we do that?
We did not go interview him.
No, I'm saying that. I don't remember. It was him.
I think it was one of those where we were like, yeah, if you can get him, we'll go down and talk to him. I don't know how he somehow was going to be able to schedule him. Did you watch any of the Nets Celtics game 4?
Yeah, I did.
The Nets, did you hear about this?
No.
They got swept.
Oh yeah, I watched. No, I said I
I'm kidding. Everyone's heard about it. What was the like the hot girl who smokes a cigarette?
Yeah, Kendrick Perkins, who I think mainly has been wrong on everything he's ever said, had one of the funniest lines on television I've ever seen. He said Ben Simmons is a single girl who's gorgeous and no one knows why she's single, and then you realize she's a cigarette smoker and it's like red parliaments or something, whatever this, like the grossest,
like shorties or something.
Yeah, and it's
it was so good. I thought it was so good.
Today I was at the gym.
Part of what made it good was the other two people on the screen going like acting like it was an inappropriate.
I think Stephen A has just been in his element now for like 3 or 4 straight days, like it just in his prime. Today, First Take is on at the gym television, but I can't hear anything, but I can see him. Today he actually is going calm because a lot of people are firing back at him. So they put Jamie Foxx as a quote up there. So it's the elites now who are coming to Ben Simmons' defense are coming after Stephen A. Smith. So they basically, the show today was him responding to a lot of Jamie Foxx. And his response was, Jamie Foxx's take was like, a lot of it is racially based. Think they're going at him unfairly. You would never do this to Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady. And then Stephen A. loses his shit again. Like, never go at Aaron Rodgers. Like, what are we talking about, guys? Like, Ben Simmons brought this upon himself.
It's incredible.
I don't know how you could defend Ben Simmons at this point in time. And then the big thing is like pay to play. Stephen A., like they're going to have like this lockout in a year potentially in the NBA. Like if you're going to get paid moving forward, unless you have an unexcused absence, like a legitimate injury, you can't just say, I'm not playing today and receive your money. And then people are like, how's that unfair? It's like, isn't that the way they are literally getting paid to play basketball?
The number of people on Ben Simmons' side is very small, and it's only people that speak publicly and have connections to the league. Nobody privately is defending Ben Simmons.
It has diminished great. Like I think this playoffs, it's jumped the shark where even if people are like, yeah, this guy might be going through some weird shit, like there ain't nobody beside like a Jamie Foxx that are like, leave this guy alone.
Jamie just knows the guy probably. I mean,
100% he's friends with Maverick Carter. He's been on the shop.
Yeah, I mean, it's not anything that he believes strongly in. No. Alex, thank you. I consider myself a ham OG. John, high-level guy, Middlekauff is absolutely made for this business. Haberkopf is next-level potting, studs. I mean, Haberkopf is OG. Kawakami said it the other day. That's way back. War Daddy's podcast. How about I just saw one that I didn't hate. I wrote it down. High motor. I mean, a little racial, honestly, but I'm offended personally as a white guy that you just think we're high motor, that we're not talented.
And I'll be honest, I was never high motor in anything I did. On the field, on the court.
Thank you, Alibi or Alibi. I'm not positive, but if that's your real name, I actually like that. If it's like Alibi Wiley.
That is a pretty sweet name. What was our producer's name?
Rolls.
Right before I got us shit canned?
Daniel Ogden?
No.
Oh, Albie. I saw Albie the other day.
Albie. You did? Where'd you see him?
At the Warrior game.
What's he doing?
He was hanging out.
Who's he work for the radio station still?
No. It's just private business.
Oh, he's just there to watch the game?
Just there to watch the game. Some friends.
Yeah, must be doing well. Like for those tickets, guy.
Somebody gave him some good tickets. Yeah.
Hey, do you have good seats?
Sorry?
When you call the game on 95.7 the game, did you have good seats? Guy Haberman called the Warriors game on 95.7 the game with KNBR's biggest employee. What a moment.
Speaking of cool guys, man. Oh, Tolbert sat down. Tolbert, hey, what's up, man? How's Middlekauff doing? How's the podcast? What a guy, man.
Where they put you? Pretty, they're taking away sweet
top of the first level, basically.
So would that be a good seat if you were just there?
Yeah, it'd be a good seat if you were there.
Yeah. You called games closer, I'm sure.
Yeah, from the floor.
Where'd you call games at Oracle? They were second level too, right?
Yeah, no, Oracle. I did Oracle from the floor. I didn't do a Warrior game at Oracle though. I did a G League Warrior game at Oracle.
Santa Cruz
Warriors. Brooklyn, we were elevated when I did the game at Brooklyn. Cleveland is like just this little cutout that they hang that like hangs off the front level of the top of the middle deck and hangs over the crowd below. It's actually kind of incredible.
Is that arena pretty sweet?
I will never forget the volume of classic rock music on the concourse in Cleveland. Three things I will never forget. The volume of classic rock on the concourse, Richard Jefferson dunking on Draymond, and how bananas the place went. This was Christmas Day 2016.
You're saying like the volume is just extraordinarily loud.
The music is, and I like loud music, but holy shit.
Yeah.
And I remember one of my favorite, Draymond got called for a foul, ran all the way to the other end of the floor. Okay, this is like 2016. This is Cleveland Warriors. This is fucking sick. And the place wanted blood. Like they wanted him kicked out of the game so bad. It was just...
He's a polarizing individual.
It was incredible. Alex Medina in love with Middlekauff. Thank you, Alex. It was incredible. Anyway, what I was gonna say about the net. We got to get to business here. What I was gonna say about the Nets game last night was, I don't know if you saw the foul on KD when Marcus Smart was on his back. Last 5 minutes of the game. It was before Jason Tatum got fouled out with a bad call. But Marcus Smart was all over KD. KD creates a little space. Smart goes back. And everyone's killing the official for it. It was a bad call. They reviewed it. I still thought it was a foul on Kevin is what they called. I think part of the problem with basketball is that part of the game is played to deceive the officials. That's part of the game. Just like baseball, where such a big part of the game is, the catcher, how he frames it. It's about deceiving the official. Like you're not playing the game. You're playing to deceive the referee or the official. No, I mean, and they're good at it. It's easier to deceive them than it is for them to check the deception because it happened so fast. It looked like Marcus Smart got elbowed in the head. Reality was he was laying on Kevin, got bumped back. Then Kevin's elbow came through, and live it looked like he elbowed him. It's not what happened.
Would you say football, the three major sports, is the least deceitful just because you're trying to get open or trying to get to the quarterback?
You don't have time to fuck around. Yeah. Now, you do maybe if the ball's over.
Grab a little. Yeah.
But if you have a chance to make a play on the ball or fake an interference, you try to make a play on the ball.
Yeah.
Now, if the ball's gone and you fall, whatever, and there's sometimes the holding the shit, right, where guys are just always flailing around. But it's when they're behind the play. It's not I couldn't make the play and instead I pretend I'm getting held.
I've become a little confused whether the NBA replay actually kind of figured it out. Because when the guys are doing this and the players doing this and then the coach does this, they can overturn a real foul call. Like they can go, that was a foul or that wasn't a foul. You know how Belichick always wanted like every flag should be reviewable?
Yeah.
It feels like in the NBA, every foul call, regardless whether it's out of bounds, touching, foul, like is reviewable. Now you only get a finite, I think there's only a couple of them, but I do kind of like that.
Well, yeah, the one thing I was like out of bounds plays late
that
in the
one's
game.
Stupid. The one where it hit the back of the hand, it goes off his finger. That's a little unfair.
Yeah.
But just a basic foul, like some stuff that's not a foul. It's like, totally. I did not foul him.
Yep, 100%.
Now, Draymond screams about 7 times a game that he didn't foul him.
Well, Draymond poked him in the eye the other night, and everyone was arguing about it.
Yeah.
You know? It's like I saw Aaron Gordon just got stabbed with an index finger.
Sometimes you do get poked in the eye playing hoops.
Yeah, but that's I'm swinging
the
ball.
It's a foul, yeah.
Anyway.
There are, I would say the DBs and wide receivers would be the group that are the closest to NBA players, and they would be deceived on individual instances, but for the most part, they just play. Maybe you get coached up like, a press corner, even though they don't really exist anymore, like where to put your hands on the inside so they don't see. But that's just, it's no different in baseball or basketball, like where to put your glove on certain things. It's just basic coaching point.
Quarterbacks sometimes flop, I guess.
Quarterbacks flop. you know, O-linemen sometimes, I guess, act like they're getting, but even that, like you're either getting held or you're not. By D lineman, I guess.
Cameron on the stream asked, Ham, what if we all get blindsided by a Jimmy trade on Thursday night? Since it's been so quiet with Jimmy the last week and a half, are we 3 days away from a Jimmy Garoppolo trade on draft night?
What was Jimmy doing the rounds the other day for in his Travis Matthews, but doing like his special rounds? Like he wasn't like going on everyone. Like to me, he did shine, but other than that, it was like random stuff. He really wanted to do. And I guess I heard someone say, like, I saw a clip that I know we're not supposed to ask you about this. So clearly they had like prerequisites, which I'm sure why, like he didn't do Dan Patrick or sure as hell wouldn't do us. Like, you are not allowed to ask me anything about the trade. Well, Jimmy, what the fuck do you think I want to ask you about?
Was it related to the thing? Remember last year or 2 years ago, he did something with his dad, like his dad's an electrician and they did something. Remember, I remember one year he did it and it was like with his dad and it didn't quite make sense.
It was with someone else, but I don't think the
dad.
guy's last name was Garoppolo. It was like some other name, but
I just remember him a couple years ago doing something. It's like, why is he making the rounds? And it was like his dad, it's like, I don't even know what, electrician's day or something like that.
Because one of the questions the guy asked him, he's like, I know I'm not supposed to ask you about the trade, but what if you're in the package deal with
Well, I'm
Deebo?
just here to talk about, Union 5707, the workers, the electricians of New York City are fine people.
Yeah, or make sure you get your $130 Travis Matthews collared shirt. God, do I look good in them. That's so, yeah. I mean, I don't think it would be, if Jimmy is traded, it would be shocking just because it finally happened, but I don't think it's actually a shocking moment. Like whenever it is constituted,
consummated,
comes to fruition.
Yeah. I guess it's possible that it would happen. Somebody suggested it would be a day 2 trade, but
could happen on Saturday. It feels like there's some player trades sometimes on Saturday once you miss out like 1, 2, 3, like your first 3 rounds. Because you're not, when you draft someone in the 5th, you don't actually think that much of that person. You're like, yeah, we got to draft somebody. Like you miss out on players in the 1st or 2nd round. Like those players you view as starters. So once you get to the Saturday, which is an all-day deal, you're kind of thinking about your team as much as you are these random guys that, like, I draft someone in the 5th round. I mean, reality, you're kind of keeping your fingers crossed that guy makes the team as much as, like, I draft a guy in the 2nd round. Like, I'm viewing this guy's going to play for me immediately. He might not, depending on my team, start, but like that guy's dressing on game day, unless he's Aaron Banks, I guess. Only the Niners can draft a guard in the 2nd round. The guy can't even dress till like November. But you know what I mean? So that's why I think you start doing some like, well, we don't have a quarterback. And even if I draft a quarterback in the 5th round, that guy might be a practice squatter for the next 3 years, right? Because if I draft Kenny Pickett, like I might not, if I'm the Panthers, I know they don't have a 2nd round pick, but somehow I trade I get Kenny Pickett on my team on the 2nd day. Maybe I go, well, him and Sam Darnold, I'm good, right? But there's no one in, like, if I took Carson Strong, the Nevada quarterback, who I heard has a really bad knee, like, whatever the medicals are, but has a huge arm. But if I take that guy in the 5th round, I don't view that guy like, well, if worst case scenario, Carson Strong is not going to play for me, or I'm in major trouble.
Like for a year or just forever?
Well, I just think you don't view much like a 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th round picks of being like concrete positions for you for that upcoming team. Now, they might turn in, I mean, every single year, a 5th rounder starts, 6th rounder starts, 7th rounder starts. But the day of the draft on Saturday, you don't pencil that guy in, right? He's got to prove himself over OTAs and training camp and preseason games.
Right.
Like that guy ultimately is going to take a lot of preseason game reps, right? And that's maybe where he like, damn, we got something here. But you don't like, there's no, we got something here with a 1st or 2nd rounder. There's like, this guy's better be good, right? If I'm the owner, it's like, I hope you guys know what you're doing here.
Right. Yeah. Do you think, I mean, if you're a team and you settle the draft, now the picks that you're trading, I mean, honestly, if I was trading a 5th round pick or a 4th round pick for Jimmy Garoppolo, I'd rather trade one in this year's draft than next year's. You know what I mean? That's the one thing is like, I'd rather, let's say I'm trading a 5th, I'd rather trade one in this year's draft that's viewed as a draft that has less depth to it. Because it's not just that this draft is viewed without the blue chippers in the top 10 that other drafts have. It's also viewed as a draft with less depth. Now, who knows? There's somebody in the 5th round or 4th round, there's going to be a good player that emerges. But I don't want to be next year. I've gotten my 1 year of duty out of Jimmy, and now I'm ready to move on to my next quarterback. And I still haven't. The pick that I traded for him still hasn't been used.
You know what's crossed my mind, and I'm not trying to be a negative Nancy, but I'm just being a human being. Wasn't this draft have a lot of COVID seniors, so guys that just stayed to play more? In theory, shouldn't it be way deeper? Or could we be hitting a point where, forever it's like, less kids are playing college, less kids are playing high school football, less kids are playing high school football. And now we saw this draft, which based on the reality of like older guys stayed to play, got better, got stronger. Yet this draft is viewed as the worst draft like ever on paper. Are we sure that like is all of a sudden next year it's just we know they got some star players at the top, but a huge reason, like you said, people are laughing like the 5th, 6th, 7th rounders. If that's a trend these next couple of years, that's a big picture trend for the league, which makes me a little nervous.
I heard Daniel Jeremiah say that people are surprised. Like people like he was just like, I thought with all these COVID seniors, this would be a better draft. My counterpoint would be like what makes a good college football team is not necessarily what makes a good NFL player, right? Like a 4th year or 5th year senior is great if you're a college football team. It's not necessarily your best players still leave after 3 years, COVID or no COVID, right?
True, because most drafts are full of juniors in probably the first 50 picks, right?
Drake London still left after 3 years. Kayvon Thibodeau still left after 3 years. Like, those guys are good.
Stingley 3 years.
Yeah, like those guys are top 50. Like, is Kayvon Thibodeau a top 15 pick in a normal draft?
Yeah.
So, that's what he's going to be. So it's a good point. I just my only thought listening to you say that is the one counter.
I'm talking less about the early guys, because those guys, like you say, like Jordan Davis is getting drafted in the first round in a great draft or this draft, right? He's 350, he runs a 4.8, he played at Georgia. Like those guys, we can nitpick. Like I think we speak about those guys, they're just unknown. You just like to know in the top 30, like this guy's going to be a player. But I get more nervous when I hear like the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th. Like usually they just loaded with guys you feel pretty good about taking. Just a lot of Hufungas. Like, are there just less Hufungas?
Yeah,
like, moving forward?
I don't like some people in the chat are saying there's more depth down the line in this draft. Maybe it'll turn out to be the case. That is not. There are many people that don't think that do not think this is a very deep draft.
Well,
that think 5th rounders are not are like you like one thing. DJ's point was, what I would do in this draft is I would trade a 4th rounder this year for a 5th rounder next year. I would trade a 5th rounder this year for a 6th rounder next year when I think the draft's going to be better.
And I think he's a good example of someone who has been watching draft class now for almost 2 decades. So he can put like a lot of perspective and context on it, right? Like the more you do drafts, the more, when I was young, I had a hard time when they'd be like, this guy reminds me of so-and-so from 96. I'm like, it's 2011. Like what I was asking my mom to take me to the park. What the fuck are you guys talking about? Like Steve Young, Jerry Rice, Rodney Harrison. So it's just when guys like that say it, like DJ now has been in the business as a college scout and doing what he does now, which is no difference. He just doesn't work for a team for basically 20 years. So when he says that, like he's saying it from his own views and talking to other people. And that's where it's just, the Rachel Nichols and everyone that wanted Roger Goodell fired like 7 years ago. Remember whenever it was coming out his head and I wanted football to end. Well, then football survived and it boomed. But there was also like, moms don't love their kid playing football. And I always I hope that's not true. But I wonder if that's going to start coming to fruition. Something to keep in the back of our minds moving forward. Because if we hear this like 2 straight drafts, that would start making me nervous, guy.
Yeah.
You start going 18 games, like you need some of those. We can start getting a shittier product. Again, not trying to be negative, Nancy. This is a big picture thing. We got a good group in the league right now to carry us, but you got to have fresh bodies keep coming in.
But I would also say this, like what we think of a draft going into a draft does not define the draft, right?
No.
Like I heard
you are as good as your star power, though, right?
For sure. But yeah, I mean, it's better for the draft night to have a bunch of stars in on draft night. But I'm just talking about like the depth of the draft, right? Every year it's the same. There's only 18 first-round guys. Well, there's 32 picks, so no, there's 32 first-round guys. Now, maybe there's only 18 guys worthy of a top 18 pick, but somebody's going to get drafted in the 2nd round that in 3 years could have been a first-rounder. So everyone says there's only 18 first-round guys. Well, somebody's going in the 2nd round that's going to prove that they should have been a top 10 pick. Happens almost every year. So you're missing some of them.
And the other thing is that for every Kayvon, right? And I'd say Kayvon, there's going to be Kayvons every year. Elite recruits that go on to have really good careers that get drafted in the first round. Like, that's never going to end. But a lot of guys get drafted. I think George Kittle's a good example of this, that are at Power 5 programs that are viewed as mid-round picks and who get better as they get. They're better pros than they were college players. Like, I think George Kittle's a great example. He is a better pro than he was a college player. I'd say Richard Sherman falls under that. But the Niners, for example, have like Daniel Brunskill. He clearly could not make it, had to go a different route, and he's going to – when Daniel Brunskill's 38, he's like, yeah, I played in the league for 9 years. But it took me 3 years to get there. So it just – there's a lot of different roads to get there. Watching the USFL, I bet it's going to help some of those guys playing more, because maybe the development now is just – people have always slowly, not everyone's, I guess, been on the same trajectory, right? There are some guys, Nick Bosa, the Bosa brothers, the Zekes, and you name the elite guy, just hit the ground running. Well, there are some guys that don't start until their third year and then go on to have a 12-year career as a starter, right? Lakeland Tomlinson, and some guys that are first-round picks, they're like, this guy sucks. Then all of a sudden he's sweet, getting $30 million. So it's like society, right? Not everyone matures at the same level. I'm always stunned by these super focused, high level, like 19-year-olds. Like, I was not like that at all. But some guys get that when they're 28. Some guys now in football, you don't have like, there is a time period you got to figure it out by. But I think we've seen over and over that maybe some guys just do better once they're able to just focus on it, eat the right foods. They just personally mature, right? Your 6th-round pick, you're like, God, I was just playing at Florida State with some of these guys that won the first round. I'm just as good as them, but I never got my opportunity. Maybe there's a coaching change, a scheme change. There are just probably way more than basketball. There are a lot of variables in football, and I think college is not that much different than the pros in terms of ton of college coaching turnover, ton of, just individual position coaching turnover, right? That impacts you. So the guy that recruited me, ton of just guys going long ways to school, just a lot going on for young kids.
Yeah. And some people would argue it's only going to get harder. You could also argue it's going to get easier. I think somebody on the chat a few weeks ago suggested that NIL and portal and all that, now you've got more X factors that you could evaluate that somebody has already had to experience. They've maybe already gotten money. Maybe they've transferred twice. Right? Maybe they've had some experiences that really give you a better idea of how they handle success and attention and all of that stuff than you would have in other drafts. Now, maybe it gets harder because they're not in one place, so you can't talk to one coach about them. Each coach you talk to only coached them for 8 months. So it's hard to know. But,
well, for example, next year when the group of let's just use the top 3 guys, just in terms of fame right now, it changes, right? But Will Anderson, Bryce Young, and CJ Stroud, especially the 2 quarterbacks, but I'd say Will Anderson's probably making some cash. Be like, how are these guys going to handle fame and fortune? Right. Be like, well, Bryce Young made $1 million 2 years ago. CJ's already banked 2. Will Anderson has about 7 different NIL deals. He's doing just fine, and he handled it perfectly. Or Caleb Williams got $8 million from USC, and the teammates started not liking him. And I'm not saying that's going to be the case, but that's going to happen to some of these guys. But I'd say so far, that is one story. Now, maybe we're so new that has not come out. Like, this guy did not handle the money well, but that's kind of feels inevitable, right?
I think there's going to be more information for teams.
What year are we in? Was that last year the first year of NIL?
Yeah, well, we've just did one. We're not even to one calendar year yet. I think it was June 1 or July 1 of last year.
So it's really hard to have concrete, this guy did not handle his $700,000 well. He blew it on chicken nuggets and shoes.
I don't think it's that hard to know. This year's draft class. Yeah, this year.
Yeah, I'm just saying.
Even Kayvon. It's part of the conversation with Kayvon.
Have you seen how much you think Kayvon got? Does anyone know?
No, but I would guess he made between
$500,000.
Yeah, something like that. Maybe a little more. He had a deal with United Airlines, and sure Nike was able to move him some cash or something. Sold an NFT. I don't know. So. All right. You want to dive into a few things?
Yeah.
Fresno State plays USC this year.
I know, week 2.
Jake Haener gets a shot, baby.
I actually, when I went to grab my couple beers, and the USC game was on. I saw RG3, and then they threw up the schedule. And I thought, we had talked before. I think Tedford, it's going to be somewhat of a tough game for Lincoln. He's going to have a lot of new pieces. But they start that schedule. Is this Fresno State, then Stanford? I know they open with Rice.
Yep, you're right so far.
So they go Rice, Fresno State, Stanford. So the Rice, they should kick ass. But I know Stanford's been down, but that's just a tough little start. Notre Dame. So really,
Notre Dame,
USC really, in theory, just gets one true cake game, right, in Rice.
Yep.
Now there are going to be some bad teams in the Pac-12 on their schedule that aren't playing well, but Fresno and Notre Dame, that's a tough little non-conference for old Lincoln.
Mm-hmm. And Stanford right away, and they don't play Oregon. That would be one thing in their favor.
They don't.
Nope, not till the Pac-12 title game.
Dan Lanning,
Utah.
Oregon play Utah?
Oregon does play Utah. Where's that game?
So you rotate the non-divisional opponents? You play 4 of the 6 every year? Is that how it works?
Yeah, like every 2 years. Oregon plays Utah at the end of the year in Eugene.
Oregon play Michigan State this year?
No.
Who's their suite? They have a suite like Ohio State, Michigan State.
Oh, yeah.
Georgia?
Yeah.
What is that, week 1?
Georgia, week 1.
Fuck.
In Atlanta. Washington State plays at Wisconsin. That's a good one.
That is pretty good.
I saw a little of their quarterback the other day. Wazoo looks a little.
Where did the gunslinger from the coach that got fired, go?
Arizona. Jaden DeLora.
So Arizona might be decent. Don't sleep on Howie Roseman's college roommate.
Jed Fish. John, before we go any further, let's tell the people about our friends at butcherbox.com/ham, where right now you get high quality beef, and you get free ground beef for life, for the life of your membership at butcherbox.com/ham.
Yeah, butcherbox.com/ham. It's easy, guy. You just go, you sign up, you get subscription, and they send you meat. 8 to 14 pounds. 8 to 14 pounds, guy. Can feed up to 24 people. I mean, in this day and age, who even has a home of 24? So if you got a home of like 2 or 3, you're feeding those people for a while. Meat, proteins. It's just we've gotten ground beef. Obviously, it comes free, but the steaks, the free range chicken, they got seafood options. They'll either pick it for you or you can individually select your box. Very, very. God, that meat looks good. I'm hungry.
Butcherbox.com/ham. Butcherbox.com/ham. They source their meat from partners with the highest standards for quality. No more searching the grocery store for the good stuff. The free-range organic chicken, the wild-caught seafood, the 100% grass-fed beef. It's all right there, packed fresh and shipped frozen for convenience. You can save time. You can customize your own box or go with one of theirs. Either way, you get exactly what you want. Your chance to never have to shop for ground beef again. ButcherBox giving new members free ground beef for life. Sign up at butcherbox.com/ham for those 2 pounds of free ground beef in every order for the life of your membership. Log on to butcherbox.com/ham to claim this deal. All right, next thing up, Tim Kawakami, who you said you heard TK say something a couple of weeks ago that hinted that he might have had an early line on Deebo Samuel discontent. But part of what he wrote in The Athletic after John Lynch's press conference on Monday is I think Deebo is closer now to getting his trade wish than he was last week, largely because of the raw discomfort that he's causing. And we've talked about this in the sense that if he really wants to get traded, he's got to go all the way, and he's got to make it really uncomfortable. He has to convince the 49ers that trying to keep him is more painful than trading him, which is hard because trading him would be very painful.
Well, he made his general manager really uncomfortable. You could see it. I mean, it's what didn't take a John Lynch body language expert to figure out that he was not. He really had to be careful what he said, but he did not like the situation at all. And deep down, if you've watched John long enough, he was fucking pissed off. But he understands 2022, he had to fake it. Well, I would say this. John Lynch is actually much more easygoing and happy than his younger counter and coworker and technical boss, Kyle Shanahan. Maybe Kyle avoided this because John really struggles at lying. And yesterday he basically didn't. He just told everyone, I can't talk about this. So please do not ask me. And then he fidgeted around. And it almost felt like they were breaking him down because he would like say a little, but then he'd be like, no, we can't. I got to stop. Well, what do you think the skinny guy with a beard whose last name is Shanahan thinks? Because if that was John uncomfortable, what do you think, old Kyle? You think he's happy?
I think he'd probably have a harder time hiding his emotions. Yes.
You think he might have thrown a soda bottle at like Biederman or something? And I wonder if the discomfort that John showed, Kyle's anger behind the scenes could be pretty high. That are you fucking serious? That I have to deal with. Now, you're lucky that when a player demands a trade, he has a lot of value. So you're asking teams for 10 and 35 and next year's 2, or you're asking for a boatload, right? Like ultimately when you decided or you realize like Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill, like the best thing those teams had going for them is their value was massive, right? Even Jamal Adams, Jalen Ramsey, like you do get a lot back. Like, ideally, you don't want to trade good players, but when you do, like you trade shitty players, like the Detroit Lions traded Laken Tomlinson for a 7th round pick. And then the guy became a star guard for the Niners. Like that's not good business. At least Deebo, if you are going to be forced into this, which I don't think the Niners will get forced into this, but I could see, I don't know how to describe their stubborn, their anger combined with the situation of avoiding just we just want to focus on Trey and getting back to the playoffs. And I can't beg Deebo Samuel to either take the offer, pretend to like Santa Clara. Like, I don't know what to say to him. I've exhausted all my options. That it is an easy transition if you feel, we all understand that it's impossible to get value, right? Because you're trading an elite player who's in the league. I don't care if they ultimately hit the picks. There's going to be some luck involved, right? The Jets or the Texans or whoever would get Deebo would immediately win because they have Deebo Samuel. Now, if you end up hitting on whoever you draft with a couple picks, it's incredible because those guys immediately resort back to Deebo's pay scale. And if they're good, you're in great shape, right? But that's a complete unknown, which I think also causes a lot of stress, right? Like I don't want to have to draft Deebo's replacement because, yeah, I could love whoever. Like it took Brandon Ayuk a little time. Like, so I could love Garrett Wilson and we know we could end up getting him at 10. But what if it turns out I was a little wrong? Jimmy Johnson was wrong. Bill Parcells has been wrong. Andy Reid, like I wouldn't be the first or be the last. So I can imagine the stress, which then the stress turns into anger because I shouldn't be stressed over this, right?
Yeah. 80% of Deebo Samuel might not be enough for you to go back to the NFC Championship game. You might need 100% of Deebo Samuel, right? That's what it took last year, was 100%. Was this guy's absolute best to get you to the NFC Championship game. So that's part of it, is can you take 3/4 of the production and backfill it somewhere else and then use that money elsewhere? Well, at this point, this year at least, you're not really using that money elsewhere, really.
There's no one else to get.
There's nothing else to do. And I do think it's probably hard to unemotionally take a step back and realize if we wait this thing out, my opinion, this is me talking, I think it's pretty likely that he has to show up based on, of his $6 million that he's made, $4 million of it came in year one. So that means that he's made $1 million, give or take. I think year two was actually $800,000 or $900,000, and then year three was a little higher. But because of the way the rookie contract is structured, that bonus, $4 million of it is right away.
Yeah.
So that means that he's made gross $1 million each of the last 2 years, which we figure, I don't know how much of it's end up in his pocket, half that. So if you're the Niners, you recognize
even that $4 million the moment you sign that signing bonus in California,
sure.
Was he see 2.1?
So to me, there was the real scenario where you start going to OTAs and now we're getting closer to the season and it's a lot harder for him to not show up. But do you want to play that game with a guy that doesn't want to be there? Do you want to force one of your most important players to show up if he doesn't want to be there? What are you really getting? And his tact is a smart one. Anybody that has siblings like you do or I do know that there is a way to play the game where you poke and poke and poke and poke and poke and poke and poke. And eventually you can get them to snap, especially we're both older siblings. I know for me, you can just poke and poke and poke and you can get away with it. And mom isn't paying attention. You're not making noise and you just know how to bug them and 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 bug them until they snap and they do something dumb, right? And it's your sibling that gets in trouble because they're screaming and yelling in the grocery store. They're throwing something at you. It's just, it's in your nature. And it's, it wouldn't be what I would want to do if I were in Deebo's seat necessarily, but there is a way sometimes to get somebody to give up their leverage, and that is to make it miserable for them to play the game. And I'm with you. I think it's probably miserable right now for Kyle Shanahan to have to even think about this. He's trying to get Trey Lance ready for the season.
Well, remember, this was self-inflicted last year, but they had somewhat of a zoo with the Trey, this is not Philly. This is not New York. This is not, Boston. But for 49er standards, like last year was pretty intense, the Trey Lance Jimmy thing. Again, they created that. I think you can live with, they created that for the right reasons. We had to try to upgrade our quarterback, but he wasn't quite ready. We stuck with Jimmy. And remember, it was not an easy start. Pretty sure they were 3-5. Now, I don't think it was just because of that, but there was just a lot going on. I think you want to avoid, and Belichick is king of this, right? Anything that's out of our control. Like, we can't have it. I watched, like most people follow Deebo on Instagram. I love his energy. I like his vibe. And I think the Niners love his vibe.
He doesn't seem angry when you look at photos or videos of him right now.
No, right? He's a positive multiplier, and which is very, very important. I think you can avoid it in a lot of businesses, right? It's like just you sell, I sell. I think it's very, very difficult in pro sports when you're just a team, you're around each other all the time. I would imagine as a football team, probably you're just around each other more than 99% of industries. Think how much time you're just sitting with each other, especially like the offensive guys with the offensive guys, the defensive guys with the defensive guys. You're just for 6 straight months, basically every day. I mean, just nonstop. Like, it's hard to hide good guys and bad guys. It's why ultimately, once the draft's right around the corner, you try to avoid shitheads and bad guys. And it's a hard balance. Like, sometimes you take chances on guys, but then you realize right away, you're like, I just don't want this guy's energy around. Jim Washburn once said, it's always easy for you guys up here in the front office to be like, this guy can play, but he's a questionable personality. And then I got to handle him. Like, once football starts and you guys just get on the next crew of guys.
That's why we pay you, coach.
It's why you make all the money and, we're not making as much, but he was right. And Deebo doesn't fall into that category at all, but we've all been in situations, well, maybe not all of us if you're listening to this, but you and I have been in situations where you're not happy with your work situation for whatever reason. I've actually been there twice. I was like that in Philly. I can relate in the sense I would remember being really homesick. We were losing. It's like this profession. Like, I don't know if I see myself doing this for a decade. I didn't, beside a couple guys that I worked with, like, I don't have friends in Philly. This place is freezing fucking cold. We're going to win 6 games. Like, this sucks. I don't make any money. Like, what am I doing with my life? I want to get home. And so I've defended Deebo if that is truly his reason. I listened to a little Jeff Darlington on with Rich Eisen. It just came up on our YouTube, homepage. So I clicked on it. And he basically alluded to with, I don't want to speak for him, but he knows, he doesn't want to be here. I think a lot of this is location based, and I can relate to being homesick's the wrong. Like, you don't want I'm old. I don't want to move back in with my parents. It's just being a familiar place. I don't. Now it's a lot different. People, they're willing to pay him, we think, a lot of money, but I don't know if this is something, and like what Tim's alluding to, like Deebo's just going to pivot.
He might not. And the other part of this, Jets Gang on the stream says players get paid for endorsements, investing. You don't know how much money Deebo has. Yeah, Deebo might have invested in Tesla with all the money he got in 2019, for all I know. I don't know what he has. But I go back to Devontae a lot. Devontae Adams had $60 million that he'd made. So he had more leverage when it came to telling the Packers what he would and wouldn't do than a player who is, 3 months away from conservatively $50 million, I would say. I don't think Deebo's getting less than $50 million in his next contract. Okay.
And a signing bonus, probably $25 to $30 million or something, right?
And it's coming. It's coming this year. Like, Deebo Samuel is going to get $50 million in the next 3 months. from somebody.
But he's literally going to get a direct deposit potentially of $30 million
from somebody, from the Niners, from the Dolphins, from the Jets, from the Texans, I don't know, from someone.
Maybe a sleeper team.
It is coming, John.
You don't think there's any chance he plays next season without a brand new contract?
Well, I think if he plays, I shouldn't say no chance, right? Maybe he wants to not be a Niner bad enough that he realizes my leverage is I got to play this year. I got to wait one more year. And then when it comes to the franchise tag, they'll trade me. They'll trade me in one more year.
Which I think would be very, very risky if that scenario plays out, because it's like, well, they would try to ride him still. And then does he give it his all? Is he all there? Not even just on game day, but just during, I could see this is where I think they're stressed. They can't hide it, and why Kyle couldn't show, because that's what they are already thinking of. Like, they're already thinking of the locker room, his mindset. What do we do? This is a major problem, until Deebo either says, I'm all in, or they decide to trade him. And if they decide to trade him, different than DeForest, that was purely a 49er decision. I won't blame them as much. I will acknowledge that they came to the decision. This, even if it is potentially fixable, it's not a guarantee, and we can't risk that. And I understand that. Like, Deebo would not have been the first, and he won't be the last to be involved in a situation of just the unknown is kind of scary, and then you factor in the money, and who knows when he's going to sign, or if he's even willing to take our cash, even if we're willing to pay him. That fuck it, let's just. You have this golden opportunity in the draft if you get handed pick 10 and pick 35 or something.
Part of it is, what do you get out of it? So let's talk about that. I want to play you a couple things here. Okay. This is Daniel Jeremiah, who you worked with, who we know, your guy, who you introduced me to years ago, and just a great guy, breaking down the draft. I mean, he watches everybody, right? He's going to be part of the draft coverage.
He's Mayock.
So this is his perspective. This is Daniel Jeremiah on his podcast, Move the Sticks with Bucky Brooks. And we're going to play a few things here. Let's react to them.
So if the Jets end up getting rid of the 10th pick, they get Deebo Samuel. The 49ers are on the clock at number 10. I've got my thought there. Maybe the Niners try to trade back. I have not made this comparison to Deebo. I know others have. I've compared Treylen Burks to A.J. Brown, but I think it still fits in that offense where you could use Treylen Burks in a variety of ways. His strength and toughness kind of complements Ayuk, with kind of what they have going there. I think he would be a fun player in the Kyle Shanahan offense.
Okay, so there's the first part of it. So he's not saying this is going to happen, but he's saying, I do think there's a player that makes sense, specifically a player that makes sense for the 49ers, and it's Treylen Burks. Now, would you draft him at 10?
Well, I watched him like most people have, just the highlights. He was a star player in the SEC. He is a dynamic playmaker, and a little similar to Deebo. He's not coming from Bama, Georgia, LSU, right? Like South Carolina, Arkansas, I would say are in the similar tier. Would you agree with that? Like the lower tier of the top dogs. And he stood out, and he's put himself in position to be a first-round pick. People I've talked to think he's a fringe because
fringe what?
First-round pick. Because he's not like a route. He's just a playmaker. Like a little like Deebo, kick returner, punt returner, has done it in his career. They handed the ball, and it wasn't totally his fault. The quarterback at Arkansas, I actually watched 3 or 4 Arkansas games last year. Now, granted, it was like against Georgia, against Alabama. Their quarterback sucked. So they just threw bombs to him, and he could do that. And he had 11 touchdowns. He had 12 touchdowns if you factor in he had 1 running, but he was
8 yards a carry.
One thing that he is different, Deebo, he's 6'2", 220. Like, he's just a longer athlete than Deebo, but I think he fits the same mold of, like, you could just move around. Now, the other thing, I don't think Deebo, I don't remember exactly what his 40 time is, but I don't think he was viewed as, like, a 4.4 flat guy coming out of college. I'd say it's safe to say he plays extremely fast. I think that's the same thing with Treylen Burks. He ran a 4.55, so people go, well, he's not like a Lave or a Ruggs. Well, yeah. You watch this guy play, it was rare that he got caught.
Running away in the Alabama game, he ran away. I think for a score.
Playmaker. So if you're talking the Jets deal, which to me is the most intriguing by far, 10 and 35 or 38, I don't think you could take it 10, but could you take 35 or 38, whatever other pick you got, with your 61 and come to like pick 22? Because I think a lot of teams are going to want like multiple picks in the second. Then all of a sudden I get pick some sweet top 10 player, right? A defensive lineman, a cornerback, Kyle Hamilton, the sweet safety from Notre Dame. What if I told you the 49ers got rid of Deebo for Kyle Hamilton and Treylen Burks?
Yeah. Now, Kyle Hamilton could go 3 to the Texans. I mean, I don't know.
But he's not, because he ran at his pro day. Kyle Hamilton ran like a 4.65. I've heard he's plummeting in the draft.
I know, but Daniel Jeremiah, he said it on the show, thinks he's a Patriots guy. Like, thinks that Caserio and Romeo would like him.
Oh, you're saying, but that pick 13, they're not going to take a pick 3.
Yeah. No, so you don't, part of it is you don't think the problem with a bad draft is hard to go back. So you couldn't get 10. Although Daniel said maybe they do that. Get 10, move back with 10. Maybe you could, right? Go from 10 to 16, get another pick, and then take your guy there.
Yeah, I mean, ideally that's what you do. But if you couldn't do that, I have no problem taking someone else at 10. Whoever, Kyle Hamilton, whatever, a non-wide receiver, whoever you think is just sweet. One of these pass rusher. Hell, Jordan Davis. If you just say the 49ers got Jordan Davis and Treylen Burks.
How about one of the Washington corners? Might be a little high for that too, but
I've heard. I talked to a buddy.
McDuffie's a good player.
People love McDuffie.
Well,
McDuffie ain't making a pass like 20, so he's going in the team.
The thing about McDuffie's 5'11", which whatever.
Super high character guy though, right?
Extremely. I've talked to him on several occasions.
I've actually heard all 3 corners. Sauce, which is an incredible name. Even Stingley, people like all 3 corners, because sometimes these can be questionable. They're just they're kind of NBA-ish.
Yeah.
People love the character on the 3 guys.
Yeah. Kyler, I don't know. Trent McDuffie, I can speak to, having talked to him several times and knowing around you.
So you get McDuffie and you get Treylen Burks.
Sure. All right, a little more on this. Here's what Bucky Brooks said about it.
I can look at the way Brandon Ayuk was utilized at Arizona State.
Yep.
He's terrific with the ball in his hands. He has some toughness or whatever. Who is to say that Brandon Ayuk can't get the promotion to the Deebo Samuel role and you bring another guy in to do something different? So if they make that trade and do it, I do believe that they can have a plan to elevate someone that is currently on their roster to utilize them in a way that they utilize Deebo Samuel down the stretch.
He's going to get better. He is going to be a better player than he's been. And he's clearly really, I mean, as he came on last year, like he's a legitimate, to me, like number 2 in the league. To say that he could replace Deebo Samuel in the backfield seems a little extreme. If I was in a draft room and we were having this, I would be like, I don't think that's plausible.
Well, he's not built like him, first of all, right?
Thinner.
Okay, now the last part. This is the part that DJ really thinks sells Treylen Burks to the 49ers.
Jameson Williams, Jahan Dotson, Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, Drake London, Treylen Burks. Those are top 6, whatever order people have them, right? So if we always talk about the Niners and we say they are run after the catch obsessed, receiving yards after the catch per reception. You know who the number 1 guy is in yards after catch among all those guys?
Burks.
Treylen Burks.
There you go.
Well, what would you say Kyle's huge on? Yak and actually blocking. He likes this guys to block.
Yeah. And versatility.
Yeah. This guy fits. But here's the overall point, though, why he was squirming yesterday, why Kyle probably hasn't been a bundle of joy the last week and a half in the office. You have that. You literally have it with a guy who is happy. I mean, not talking right now, but in general. Like
he's a plus in the locker room.
He smiles. He's a positive multiplier. And he literally can do it against fucking Aaron Donald and the Packers and the Eagles and the Bucks. Like, he does it every week.
No question about it. No question in your mind.
No projection. He stays
Trey,
healthy. He dominates.
You're going to get Deebo the ball right here 6 times a game, and it's going to turn a 0-yard pass into a 7-yard play.
This is where historically I just think you've had like, because if I was like on Parag's team, like from a money value standpoint, like we should do it. The value, if we can somehow get their 2nd round next year, if we can get more than they were going to give for Tyreek Hill, because I saw someone in the chat said their deal to Tyreek Hill, and it's true, 35, 38, and 69, which I saw Rap Sheet said both the 2 deals for Devontae and for Tyreek of what all the deals that ended up getting consummated, did I say that right?
You said it right.
Yeah, consummated, equaled around like 11 to 13 range, which is fine. But if you're the Niners, like I just keep saying no, nope. And eventually, hopefully, like, hey, you're the Jets, you're so desperate. I need 10, 38, and next year, even if I give into next year's 2. But I gotta feel like I'm getting a shitload. But again, Kyle goes back, like the value's great and the cheap contracts are cool. And I got 7-year contract extension. I'm not going anywhere. But ultimately, I'm losing Deebo Samuel, which is our season was dead. We were talking about Trey Lance starting because it was over. Then all of a sudden, number 19 carried us not to the playoffs, to the NFC Championship game, where we had a lead 17-7, or was it 14-7 in the second half? We were leading in the NFC Championship game, where I'm pretty sure he had scored in that game. So it's like, what are we talking about? I get from a coaching standpoint, like that's where eventually I draw the line of like the value. That's where Bill is just the ideal. Like he's just kind of morphed into one human. So it's like, it's always in his brain. We're at the end of the day. And I give Kyle a lot of credit. He is the coach of the team, right? More balancing the salary cap and worried about 5 years. Like he's trying to win 11 games next year, right?
Yeah, you've been adamant about that point. Have you noticed in the NBA who's a terrible GM?
LeBron?
The players. The players are bad GMs. Why? Because they want right now, this second, I need everybody that I need right now. Right? That's not how GMs are. Generally, they don't think that way. It's about 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And these teams that are built this way are terrible, are a mess.
Well, because Kevin Durant and LeBron never would have waited on Jordan Poole, right? He was a G League.
And I don't.
Didn't you call his G League game? I mean,
no player. He wasn't in that game. No player would. John, you wouldn't. Nobody would. You're a player.
The game's next week. I'm help.
Playing in the game. Like I don't want to go lose. What am I doing all this work for? GM's like, if we stretch out this build another 3 years, I can get another contract. GM's not in a rush.
But I think one thing you hear with John Lynch, and he's the Amazon offer didn't come up, but he did allude to like we've been really close twice in basically 3 years. Yep. Like they're thinking to me as they should be. They know they got a chance with their core guys to try to win in the next couple of years. Like, I don't know if they're necessarily thinking like 7 years, but they're probably thinking more than just 2022 because of Trey, but they're thinking 22 to like 25. Like their gap right now is right now. Now, you could argue that we've seen a lot of players come into the draft recently at skill positions and hit the ground running. But you also then like, okay, are we going to try to outthink and take McDuffie or Stingley at 10 and then try to work up? Well, what if like all of a sudden the Eagles take the guy at 15 and we don't get the guy that we wanted? Then now we don't love the guy that we got. Now do we just take a center? So now we got Lindenbaum and McDuffie, but we don't have a receiver.
You could say to Deebo,
it's out of your control when you draft, right?
The idea of moving back up for the guy you want's great, but the guy's got to be there. You could say to Deebo, we're trying to win a championship this year. We can't trade you right now, but you come back and play for us. You give us what you got.
The Aaron Rodgers,
and we'll trade you after next year.
You do the Aaron Rodgers.
If you're Deebo, you don't.
Yeah. Difference is Aaron
give me the ball 12 times a game, and I'm like, yeah, Aaron is rich,
and he was making $36 million. So he's like, listen, we'll figure it out, but I'm still getting $2 million a game. So Deebo's like, oh yeah, because I make the Pro Bowl, I got a bump in my my salary. It's still 2.7.
Thanks for the $50K.
Yeah. Appreciate that one, Parag.
Yeah. So
it is. They're in a much like Seattle doesn't have to deal with this. Titans aren't dealing with this. Like they have contract situations they have to deal with their player, right? But their guy didn't ask for a trade.
Yeah.
And it clearly is like, listen to Darlington. This is not fake. Like this is, and honestly, not that anyone believes it is. John Lynch's body language said it all. Like this is really real. Like this is time's ticking here. Like you guys want to talk about fourth rounders? No. I don't blame him. Like it was a very, very tough situation.
Yeah,
It was the most uncomfortable of all the not that I watched everyone by any means, but I bet if we looked at like just pick 5 random teams, it's a pretty loosey-goosey. Oh yeah, what's up, guys?
well, even the Jags right now, Trent Baalke got his job. He's the second lease on life, right? What does he have to be uncomfortable about?
I actually saw 2 visuals. I didn't watch them, but it was Howie and Sirianni, and it was John Robinson and Vrabel. So some of them did do dual ones where the coach just joined them. Now, the GM ended up getting a lot of questions, but do you think non-Deebo Samuel, Kyle just goes with him? It's just an easy one, or it's just an easy one to also avoid with Jimmy still on the team.
I don't know. Last year,
Kyle did just talk a couple weeks ago at the
I'm not sure that we see Kyle. It wouldn't shock me, but yeah, I mean, maybe we would if everything was. But he wouldn't want to answer Jimmy questions, though.
No,
if it wasn't Trey Lance questions, there'd be Jimmy questions.
It was an easy one to avoid.
How's Trey doing? So it's an easy one to skip, but it's funny that you said you saw a report that there's 3 different people have 3 different picks in Jacksonville right now. Jacksonville has the number 1 pick.
Well,
the owner wants somebody, Baalke wants somebody, Doug Peterson wants somebody.
I saw Tony Pauline, who did the Jets, worked for Pro Football Talk.
I said Pauline, so you're right. I think it is Pauline, so apologies.
He had said that the buzz is that Baalke wants the Georgia kid and the owner wants the
Aiden Hutchinson. Yeah. And
DJ added the Doug thing.
DJ said that Doug Peterson wants the guard from.
I can see Doug just going, give us an offensive guy. Doug is not like in there pounding the table. Like I could really see Baalke. The thing with the Trayvon Walker guy is he's viewed as like the highest upside, and everyone keeps comparing. I was listening to Schrager talk with Peter King of like Baalke passed on J.J. Watt. And J.J. Watt wasn't J.J. Watt at the time, but I vividly remember in the NFL, people were. I was at the draft. Alden, who? What? Do you remember? That was a crazy pick at the time.
I do remember. I do.
It was a ballsy, and let's face it, like he got it right. The person fell apart, but he had a home run on the player.
He doesn't get the you passed on J.J. Watt scarlet letter.
Well, through 3 years, Alden Smith had an all-time sack record, right?
Yeah.
So I think he's just viewing it, and I don't disagree. I think in a draft that doesn't have a Bosa brother, a Myles Garrett, a Von Miller, where you're just like, well, you don't pass on the can't miss, that it's like no one knows. There's no such thing as a high floor. Don't you just take the swing for the fences? If it's between the
I think so. I would not be obsessed with I'm going to hit a double with this guard. Now, the only caveat would be
he plays tackle too, but they already have 2 tackles.
They drafted a tackle last year, and then they tag a tackle or extend a tackle?
I think DJ said in the podcast or maybe the previous one that some people think that the Stanford guy struggled.
Yeah. So,
wasn't he a 2nd round pick?
Yeah, hurt. He was a hurt second. He's coming off an injury. I don't know if he was still hurt when they drafted him, but. You could argue we just drafted Trevor Lawrence. We've got to protect this guy. Just a guard. I don't care what people say about taking a guard at 1. He's worth more to us. We can't trade back. So what are we going to do? It's pretty crazy. They went from the draft where everyone would have traded up with them last year to a draft that clearly nobody wants to trade up with them, right?
Well, someone DM'd me yesterday, or I just was going through some DMs and answering them. And some guy asked me a question about, if there's not a Kyler Murray or a Trevor Lawrence in a draft, shouldn't you always trade back at number 1? Well, I say, the only time anyone ever wants to trade up to number 1 is when that player's there. In a draft like this, nobody would trade. Like if you're the Lions, you would just be like, why would I trade you a 3rd round pick to move up 1 spot? I'll just take whoever you don't take. And who knows? Maybe I feel that if you take the guy that I think you're going to take, I'm going to get my number 1 guy. So the only time there's ever a trade up to number 1 is quarterbacks, or if there was like Myles Garrett or Nick Bosa, let's say they were in this draft, but then the Jags would 100% just take the player.
It happens less with pass rush. It's when it happens with redundant needs. When I have a quarterback already and the quarterback is the number 1 pick, right?
Well, if I told you that
if Trey Lance was in this draft,
or CJ Stroud was in this draft, the Jags would trade out of the pick, right?
Right.
and they would trade, and it might just be as simple as like they trade to pick 2 so they could still get the pass rusher they want for 2 2s, right? Be like, well, listen, that'd be tricky actually, because you'd be like, well, I guess
it'd be an interesting year if the player they want is the 9th best player in the draft, right? If the player they want is Icky.
Well, they do draft a lot, number 1 overall, so they
right.
could easily just be there again next year. So we could see it with all the quarterbacks.
Yeah. Somebody on the stream is reporting something, and before I read it, I'm going to search it.
I think you got to be very, very careful with those streamer comments.
Well, here it is.
Breaking news?
No.
Deebo Samuel's been traded?
No. But let's talk about this real quick. Let me throw this up here.
Jock Peterson has been fined for calling the fan a fucking pussy.
What? I mean, an all-time, to me, getting heckled in a basketball game and then you hit a shot in front of the fan always looks like it feels fantastic. You turn around, you say something in his face, but you're going to hit 12 other shots in that game.
Yeah.
Hitting a home run after you stepped out and looked at the guy?
Well, the guy and on the Brewers broadcast, the guy was screaming at him. Like if you're a fan, if me and you were at the game and we were sitting remotely close, we'd be like, "Shut up, this clown," you know?
Right.
Even if I'm a Brewers fan, it's like, can you just relax a little bit, buddy? I mean, can you just shut up? And then it turns out the Brewers announcer is like, "God, this guy's been killing us for 7 years."
Bam. And he didn't just hit a home run.
Bomb.
He absolutely shit on it.
And then when the mic got him saying fucking pussy to the guy, it doesn't get any better.
No, it does not get any better. Good for that guy, man. Good for Jock. Jock and Devontae pissing off the whole state of Wisconsin. All right, John. Tony Pauline just tweeted this. Rumors in the league are heating up that Deebo Samuel could be on the move. We'll have more tonight with Wing Oz.
I do believe, and maybe the Jets, let's just say the Jets or the Texans, because you got to get a really high pick. Wouldn't it behoove you to just say, I can't do the trade till the night of the draft? And then they might say back, well, what if the guy we want's there and then the trade's off the table? I can give it to you now and it's concrete, or else we risk like this trade could fall apart draft night. So do you do it now? Because I would struggle to do it before Thursday night when they're on the clock.
Well, what you could say to the Jets is, if you would rather just draft Chris Olave than draft Chris Olave, I'd rather have Deebo Samuel.
Yeah. Or if you want to force my hand, I'm not comfortable with doing it now. You got to overpay. When you see the housing market in the Bay Area.
Well, that's what the Niners did last year.
Yeah.
Now, they did it much earlier, but they overpaid to do the Trey Lance deal early, right?
So you want him right now? I need a massive overpay. To me, I don't think, like, if it's announced before the draft that Deebo Samuel has been traded for, let's just pick 10 and 38, I think people would be like, that's not enough. If you're a 49er fan, if you're a 35-year-old 49er fan, you've seen Frank Gore's, Vernon Davis's, Jerry Rice, Terrell Owens, like, that's as good as it gets. Everyone acknowledge, hell, non-49er fans, like, that's one of the most remarkable things I've ever seen. And you're just getting them just for the value. Like, I just don't. And I get the other guys got traded. I understand, but
this is what I would say to every person that says that. They offered 2 2s and a 3 for Tyreek. Okay, would you take 2 2s and a 3 for Deebo Samuel?
What did Veach tell them? No, right?
Yeah. Tyreek kind of said no too, I think, right? Tyreek would have had to agree to the deal because he was going to sign an extension. He'd rather go to Miami.
True.
So that was,
I think
Tyreek kind of chose.
You're right. And I bet when you do the value, it's probably not that much different, right? Because the Chiefs ultimately got 29 and a pick later.
But every market's different. Sometimes like you said, sometimes you pay more for something that's in theory less. But the Chiefs were not keeping Tyreek Hill. But Devontae Adams was not returning to the Packers.
But if you were a Chiefs fan, if you and me, we lived in Kansas City, we're just diehard Chiefs fan. We're just like fucking, I love Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes. All of a sudden you text me. You're like, oh my God, Tyreek has just been traded to the Jets. Because Tyreek trade did kind of come out of, I guess it kind of got reported on like 12 hours earlier, but it happened fast. If I said you got traded for 35, 38, and 69, my first response would be like, are you shitting me? They got him for 2 second-round picks and pick 69? Like people would have been pissed. At least Veach can say, now it's not great. It's the Niners pick. We got a first rounder. It's a pretty shitty first rounder. But like you could argue that's not much. I honestly think the Packers got fleeced. At least Veach says we got multiple fourth rounders too, which I always don't value as much, but whatever. I mean, I thought the Packers got fleeced. Veach got more, and I think there might be a little bit more. Like ultimately, I think Tyreek, is he an all-in guy right now? Devontae's character never had an issue. People loved him. Like Tyreek has battled some stuff off the field with, I don't know, domestic violence. So you could argue he has got some red flags, but his play on the field, like I struggle to trade these guys. Like, oh yeah, just give me a couple seconds. What
because it adds up to 368.
I don't even care. Like if I told you that the Niners got 38, 35, and 69, you had to bet $5,000. You had to put it on a number. Week 1, is one guy starting, two guys starting, or three guys starting? What number would you put it on? You had to put it on 1.
Yeah, I wouldn't put it on 3.
Would you feel comfortable putting it on 2? Week 1.
No, I mean, if you told me week 1 and one of them's a receiver, you told me Brandon Ayuk, Juwan Jennings,
a couple running backs and Kittle are out there.
Kittle, yeah. I mean, that's
he just gets 7 snaps.
Yeah, we're not.
But if I told you he averaged 7 snaps in September, like that'd be believable, right? It's like a slow build for this kid to figure it out.
Yeah,
I think people would freak if that's the deal.
Part of what makes it different than those other 2 deals is that now maybe Deebo's convinced the Niners that he is like Devontae. If he convinces the Niners that he's like Devontae, then the Niners are in a tough spot. He's not. He's deaf. We believe him under no circumstances is he showing up. We don't want to deal with this. Now, if that's what you think, but if you're willing to go to the mat and try and dare him to show up and believe that once we get him in here, and I think that's part of Lynch, is he believes once we get him back in here, our culture, right? Now, maybe they've been spooked and he's convinced them that they should stop believing that. But I think that's part of them believing in why they can keep him around is they believe that their locker room and their culture and what we've got here and Kyle's relationship with Deebo. It's hard sometimes to accept the divorce when you're blindsided versus when you've been hearing the couple's been having trouble for 3 years. And the Niners are blindsided right now.
Yeah, or
maybe they were blindsided 2 weeks ago, but whenever it happened, they're like, wait a second, Kyle, Deebo, before we practice, we would hang out and talk about Deebo's kid. What the hell?
Well, there's a big difference in a divorce when your buddy tells you, man, she's been sleeping with Billy for the last 6 months. I found that out. To when we haven't, we don't even talk. We haven't eaten dinner together in 6 months. We sleep in separate rooms. Like we don't even like each other. Can't wait to get divorced, which I think happens sometimes, right?
Yeah.
In player trades. This does feel blindsided a little bit.
It's a one-way divorce.
Yeah. If he does pull it off, I will give him credit. He spooked him pretty good, right? If he's traded, there's
only one way to get traded, and you have to go scorched earth and convince them that you're never coming back from it.
So if he's traded in the next 48 hours or on draft night, he has convinced them that it's over.
Yeah.
Which means it ain't worth it to try to get me back on board because I don't have the energy to fake it.
Yeah. Even if you have doubts, you can't show them doubts. Even if you think.
My guess as of right now, they would not do the trade till Thursday. Because I don't think you do this in the next couple of days. I wouldn't do it. I honestly.
Well, think about it. If you're the Jets and you say 10-35, exploding offer, and then I say we're not going to do it today. If you would have done it today, you'd still do it Thursday.
Yeah.
Right.
For sure.
If Joe Lacob said exploding offer Warriors and they didn't take his offer, would he have still bought the Warriors 2 days later for the same price? Yes.
And in fairness, we're responding to a guy that I don't know if is,
No, but just the idea of leverage when it comes to exploding offers, right? You explode offer on a house, you explode offer for the Warriors, which is what Joe Lacob did. Ethan Strauss wrote about it in his book. He said, this is the offer, you got to take it now. And the offer got accepted. But he would have paid that same price 3 days later.
Yeah.
He would have. He wanted the asset. They want Deebo. They want Deebo more than the Niners want to give him away.
Well, to me, for 10-35, it does not behoove you to do it today or the next day. if they were to say this, we'll give you 10, 35 and next year's 1, then I might do it today. If you're willing to trade them.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of
part of
like
you have to make them willing.
Yeah.
All right.
See where this goes.
Thirsty Thursday. That'll be the trade market. I hope it doesn't. What's today's Tuesday, Wednesday. I mean, I don't want it to. It's weird. I don't want it to happen because I love watching Deebo Samuel. But for the moment of draft night,
yeah, I'm cool with it.
For that moment,
I do think after the moment ended though, and we get to OTAs, and it's like, well, it's like Treylen, a lot going on.
Treylen Burks, little hamstring. They expect him. He'll be full go next week.
He said that the playbook at Arkansas was a little more basic than what Kyle's throwing at him. There's a lot going on. McDuffie's getting worked by Ayuk every day in practice. You're like, holy shit.
Ayuk's back in the doghouse. All right, question. Thank you. If we trade Deebo to the Jets for 10, 35, and 38, then move back to 16, get Zion Johnson, then trade 38 and 61.
This guy is
to
deep
get
in
to
draft
25.
names.
I guess the question is, do you like all that? That's a lot of maneuvering.
Yeah. I don't know enough about these two guys to be completely candid. I don't know who either one is. Do you?
Boy, I don't know how to pronounce it. Is it Mafe?
Wide receiver?
He's a planner. From Minnesota. I haven't seen him play. Pass rusher, 6'4", 261. I mean, is he that high on a lot of draft boards? 25?
I guess I've heard the name, but I don't know much about him. But again, they're going to be guys drafted early on this draft where you're just
I just know who this guy is. Mafe on the board though. I'm not seeing him in the top. I'm seeing him in the second round on just a couple of quick draft boards here.
I would probably take the approach if I got 10, 35, and 38. I would think about using all the picks and just trying to take as many swings as possible.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I know, a lot of people like Jaquan Brisker, who the Niners worked out, the safety from Penn State.
Yeah, but he's like a later second-round pick, I think, third-round pick.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be opposed if they got 10 to take Stingley, take McDuffie, or even 13, take Kyle Hamilton, take a player like that, and then use my 61 with the pick from the Jets in the 30s to move up and get Treylen Burks or, if Olave, whoever you loved. And Kyle's earned the right now with wide receivers. And Pettis, rough start. They've battled back.
I was thinking about that today, actually.
But see, you forget about it quick once you start. Steelers haven't hit on every wide receiver, but they've hit on 90% of them. That even the scrubs you don't even know about. So I would go other position there, unless they wanted Garrett Wilson or Jameson Williams. Which do you see? Rap Sheet retweeted Jameson Williams' agent, and he was out running around. It's like, God, I
saw that.
These guys, didn't he get hurt like 2 months ago?
I saw that. Yeah,
I guess it would have been the national championship game would have been like January 8th or something, right? So he's 3.5 months out. It's not as crazy.
It would definitely not feel good in the moment to take Zion Johnson with one of those picks. I think it'd be hard. He's a guard. I'd have a hard time taking a guard at 35 or 38. I would not feel good about it.
Well, they just did that kind of last year, and the guy was on the scout team. And it was like, he's just this huge upside guy, like Ali Marpet from Cal Poly. Guy fucking came from Notre Dame. That I think part of the thing that rattled everyone last year was like, this guy came from Notre Dame. I think that's why Leatherwood is like, this guy came from Alabama. When you have a guy from like an elite program and then he struggles, you're like, well, I get if he's from Fresno State and there's like a learning curve or even like a smaller program, right? Like Texas Tech or whatever. It's going to take some time. This guy's at Notre Dame for Brian Kelly. Like, aren't guards at Notre Dame? Shouldn't they be plug and play? Like, we can bitch and moan about McGlinchey's talent all we want. He was just a plug and play starter. I like plug and play offensive linemen. Honestly, in every round. unless you're like your team's already like full and the guy's gonna be a backup. But if you're drafting the guy to be a starter, which the Niners drafted that guy to start and he couldn't do it, which happens. Like they're not alone, but that'll rattle you a little. That was not good.
No.
And their guard play was now they don't have a choice. Like, so if you draft a guard, you're basically saying like, are you that convinced with Aaron Banks? Because ideally you would be like, well, at least we got one. Brunskill can play them all. We're good, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not like, well, you're just going to have both guys.
The one thing would be if they love Zion Johnson, let's say, because I found the clip today of us talking a month ago, because it's become pretty clear that, or a lot of people seem to now agree that the Alex Mack situation is a replay of the Joe Staley situation. And we talked about this. You can go watch the tape on March 29th. I said they got screwed last year in the second round because everyone knew they wanted Liam Eichenberg. And the Dolphins jumped over him, took Eichenberg. The Niners then traded back with the Raiders and took Jalen Moore,
who actually might be an okay player.
So they can't let everyone know.
And they're not. I mean, it's...
Well, but I'm just saying that when it comes to the center, the Alex Mack situation, I think they would have liked for it to stay quiet for people just to believe that Alex Mack was coming back until the 49ers.
My pushback would be to any of the guys that wanted to keep it quiet internally on the Niners. Like the rest of the league watches film, especially the good teams. Like Alex Mack's 37 years old.
Yeah, no, I get it. And you made that point last month, and it was a good point then, and it's a good point now.
Like if you and I were running the Niners, wouldn't be like, well, we got Alex Mack for the next 6 years.
I said Jalen Moore. I meant Aaron Banks. They traded back the Eichenberg and took Aaron Banks.
Yeah, but they ended up getting Jalen. They got Jalen Moore later, who actually played. So to me, I just think Eichenberg was viewed. I don't think Aaron Banks. For at least again, I'm not breaking down the film on all these offensive linemen. I think Aaron Banks was viewed as a kind of a reach, and they were forced to do that. You're saying once I'm saying
there's not like if they love Zion Johnson, then that's different than what happened last year with Aaron Banks potentially. That's my point.
But this gets back to just the draft in general. They loved McGlinchey. Like there's no just because you love a guy does not mean he's going to turn out to be Deebo or Bosa. So it's just if we went around right now to every GM, they'd have 4 or 5 players they love. And if we just put all their names on a board, 50% of them are going to be underachievers. And underachiever might be the wrong word, just not live up to being as good as these guys that do this for a living and have spent all this time are going to be. And that's the hard part about this whole thing.
David Hasselhoff, what's Deebo's leverage other than crying on IG?
Saying I won't sign your contract?
Yeah, his leverage is convincing them that the Deebo Samuel they knew and loved is gone. And when they look in his eyes again, they won't see love and affection and joy. They'll see anger and divorce. That's his leverage. Is convincing that in fact, it is good for him to meet with them if he can sell them that. I don't want to talk to you again. What Mike McDaniel told me about
don't call me.
Don't call me. What Mike McDaniel told me. Woo! I know everything, Kyle. I know everything. That's what you got to go scorched earth or cool.
Hard to say.
Yep. All right. We'll be here.
Hell of a day.
Later.
Peace.